I'm delighted to introduce Into the Woo, a wellness podcast focused on exploring the emotional, mental, spiritual parts of well-being through sharing tools like chakras, sound healing, neuroplasticity, spirit guides, and how to tap into your intuition and more. My name is Alice Hu, and my story starts with discovering for myself how yoga and meditation allowed me to find my truth. What we don't realize is that we have societal, familial, generational baggage that strongly influences our beliefs, thoughts, and actions. For most of my 20s, I did what I was supposed to be doing. There was a lot of shoulds. I went to a good school, got a good job, but they were all based on values that weren't completely mine. It wasn't until I started having a regular yoga practice, which led to a meditation practice, that I was able to start deprogramming what didn't serve my highest good and start to discover my soul's purpose. See, something that people don't realize is yoga actually isn't an exercise. It actually is meant to clear the mind through movements in the body to help you give a stronger mind-body connection. So when I teach yoga, I strongly focus on the breath because that is what makes the connection. And once that started happening, my mind got very clear. I started to realize certain things, values, situations that weren't working for me, and everything changed. So this also happened right around my Saturn return, which I don't know if you guys have gone through yet, but it's pretty intense. It happens in your late 20s, early 30s, and it really propelled me forward to where I am now. It's a time when the universe and when Saturn, the taskmaster, is making sure that you are on your path and that you're following through with your soul contract. So it basically just means there can be a lot of changes, big upheavals, change of jobs, you could get married, have a kid, move. Those are all things very much so characterized by Saturn return. And for me, it was moving back to the United States after 5 years in Shanghai, China, and it was shifting 100% into entrepreneurship and coming home to discover and shed what I left behind when I went abroad. When you live abroad, you become a different version of yourself because I believe that different places just change you, just subtle changes. And I was more than happy to leave all the unresolved issues of my former core self behind, which was back in Washington, D.C. So I also want to share a little bit about my career before starting this podcast and my wellness company, Woo Woo Company, which I'll share a little bit more in a little bit. So I've always had a very entrepreneurial role in all the companies that I've worked for. And while it was really exciting to learn and implement digital strategies, because it was during that time when it was just beginning to be a thing, be a job, I always felt that something was missing. And it was quite prevalent. The more corporate the environment got, the more that I was just feeling like something wasn't right, something was off. I would get frustrated about how slowly things moved, how people wouldn't just see the bigger picture. I always wanted to do more. It was very hard to put me in a box, whether it was talking to coworkers or clients. For me, I was always like, well, you should really be looking at it in this way, but it was just wasn't part of their purview or just wasn't something that they were willing to do. And so it was quite frustrating at times. And I have had a couple entrepreneurial ventures already before starting this one. I had an email newsletter when I was in Shanghai. When I got back to the US, I started an e-commerce company. But I believe that intuition is a muscle and it's a skill, and we all have it. We can tap into it whenever we need it. And that was what was always nagging me and telling me, hey, this isn't right. I was learning a lot. I was having a lot of fun. It was very fulfilling at times, but there was always a sense of just unhappiness. And I just couldn't place the words. I couldn't place my finger on it. And I remember when I came back to the US and I became a full-time entrepreneur, I was still very much so in denial of being an entrepreneur. I've always thought of it as such a privilege to be able to pursue something that you're very passionate about, and also that is high risk. To be an entrepreneur is not easy. And my parents, they're immigrants, and this was not something that they wanted for me. They wanted me to get a corporate job that was stable, that paid well. But for me, after a while, I realized that no matter how much money I made, I would eventually come back to the fact that it was unfulfilling and I was looking for something more. And when I discovered it, my truth, honestly, a flow and an ease entered my life that I'd felt here and there before, but never so consistently. I had a deep sense of purpose and knowing that this is what I'm meant to do. And this podcast is an extension of that. So Woo Woo Company came before this podcast. It's a bespoke wellness events company and my purpose. I'm here to really help you discover your truth and to live an aligned life. It's something that I have gone through, at least, making that first leap, and I'm continually exploring different topics to help me dive deeper. And I just want people to just start somewhere. And so it's about just discovering what's right for you, making those small steps and getting things more clear. I've hosted 50 plus events this past year, and I'm looking forward to sharing even more on this podcast, which, by the way, my friends have told me for probably about a year, whether it's just them saying, hey, this would probably be a very good idea for you, to literally friends saying, I'm channeling that you really need a podcast. And I just had a lot of blocks about starting it. It's very new. Didn't want to do something that was just similar to everyone else. But I always say, anything you do is going to be different just because no two people are alike. So I'm really hoping to guide you in this journey, whether you have no idea what you want to do or what makes you happy, or you're looking to make a really big change in your life. So these woo-woo concepts have long been given the side eye and scoffed at, but more than ever, people are believing and integrating what works for them. I mean, I was one of those people. I remember the first time a couple of years ago, my sister was like, oh, I want to buy a tarot deck. That's what I want for Christmas. Because I was asking her what she wanted for Christmas. And I looked at it and I was like, what is this? It's like $50 for a bunch of cards. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And she was like, well, they are also pieces of art, And I was like, I didn't understand it. But 6 months later, I definitely understand it and I actually use my various decks a lot more than she does. So I've always been very skeptical, but every time I learn something new, I really just think about it, sit with it, and follow my intuition. Is this working for me? And to never rely on one thing completely, and to kind of see all that is available along the spectrum of quote unquote woo-woo. Words are magic. Energy can be felt, and intentions are really powerful. These are things that we don't really talk about, but everything holds energy, and it affects what you believe in, your beliefs, your thoughts, and thus your actions. So it really all starts in the mind, and I found, understanding the different energy centers of my body, tarot, astrology, human design, crystals, journaling, meditation have really just helped me cultivate the mind, get more clear, and really just make my internal world a much better place to live in, so that what's reflected out in the external world is what I want. So what you have to remember is to keep an open mind and follow your intuition. You always know best. All the answers are within you. And I always say discover the tools and concepts that resonate most with you and just leave the ones that don't work behind. So, what are some of my favorite tools? So, I really like astrology. It's pretty difficult to understand, but I have a handy digital calendar that tells me kind of like the movement of the planets, the changes that happen daily and weekly. And it's just really nice to be mindful of those changes. I really enjoy journaling with the full moon and the new moon. So with the new moon, it's a wonderful time to set intentions and really just plant seeds to what's going to happen the next 2 weeks or months. And the full moon is wonderful for release, to just let go of something that doesn't serve you. I have also really enjoyed diving into what, the sun, moon, and rising are within astrology, because what we see in horoscopes is the sun sign, but there's so much more than just looking at your sun sign, and that's why people get frustrated. Some people are like, well, I'm definitely not an Aquarius. I'm definitely not a Leo. But it's not until you understand this triad, the sun, moon, and rising, that really just makes everything make sense. So the sun is your personality. Okay. And the moon is how you deal with emotions, the side of you that you kind of hide. And the rising is how people view you. So my sun is Leo. So we're known as big personalities, want to be the star of attention. My moon and rising happen to be Capricorn, which is a very earthly, grounding sign, very practical. And so it's a very interesting combination. I've had to really understand my emotions, really learn how to process them and not solve them, just sit with them. And also when people meet me, they think I'm very Capricorn. But also there's a side of me, that Leo side, among, other things, that's not as serious. So I'm constantly trying to break free of being a little bit more too serious and too practical. So I also really enjoy journaling. So like I said, with the full and the new moon, and I really find it helpful just to start each day journaling and also in the evenings. So I will share a little bit more in the notes section on rituals, but they're just so powerful. It really gives you the autonomy to start your day the way that you want it to start. Because if you just immediately wake up and look at your phone, you're allowing the news, your friends, your family, your coworkers to dictate how your day is going to be. But when you start just going inward, going through your morning routine, it's very powerful, especially when you set an intention. So journaling, you can really just free journal, free write about, what you dreamt about, what you have to do during the day just to get started. And meditation. Meditation I found to be so powerful because even just a few minutes really refreshes the mind and the brain, and I've just really enjoyed it. I don't do it as much as I should, but every time I do it, just like when I exercise, I don't regret it. I'm just so happy that I've done it. If you find that meditation is very difficult for you, I really recommend listening to a sound bath meditation. I have it on SoundCloud and also on my YouTube channel, but it's one of the easiest ways to start a meditation practice. And the sounds, the frequencies are also very healing, allowing you to expand, allowing you to reach a higher consciousness through these higher frequencies. And the sound just really allows you to connect back to the present moment, because one of the most difficult things people tell me that they face with meditation is that their mind is racing. Well, obviously, if you just do it once or even a handful of times, it's going to be very difficult to change what has been happening in your brain for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, how many years it's been. And so I really invite you to just try it for a few minutes every single day for a week, and then stretch it out to 2 weeks, a month, and 3 months, and just see where that goes. And so the sound baths are just so helpful because Some people fall asleep because it's that relaxing. Some people are able to find that nice in between state of awake and asleep. And once you start experiencing the benefits of meditation, you really won't go back. I remember my first experience with a sound bath, a sound meditation, was a couple years ago. It was actually my first trip back to Shanghai after I moved back to the United States. And I just had a couple of friends and they were like, "Oh, we're hosting this a sound bath at our friend's place. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "What's a sound bath?" They're like, "Oh, it's like that sound, those sounds like you hear after a yoga class. It's really relaxing. Come, it'll be fun." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I really had no idea what it was. It was like so mysterious, the person that did it, and no one could really explain it in a way that made sense. They're just like, it's just so magical for days. I like feel like I'm floating. I feel so wonderful. My mood is so much better. And it just seemed wild, wild to me. And so my first experience was just so magical. I really did feel like I was floating. The next few days, I felt more calm, more in tune with my body. It was just so wonderful. So I always knew that I wanted to incorporate that into, a yoga class that I taught or just in my own wellness toolkit. And now I facilitate them because I just think it's such a wonderful gateway, such a powerful tool to get you to understand and connect with your body and bridge that mind-body connection. So I hope you'll give it a try. I really loved it. And I'm super excited to be on this journey with you. And please subscribe and tell your friends. And the next episode will be about the intersection of Asian Pacific American Heritage and Mental Awareness Month, because that's what we're in May. I'll talk about my Chinese heritage as well, how many wellness concepts have Asian oranges, and why cultivating the mind is so important. See you soon.